In this video, I'd like to take some time today and talk about my own home park, Six Flags Great America. Now, there are 13 rides that I consider notable and worth mentioning in this video at the park. I'll go into an in-depth review of each ride, and then at the end of the video, I'll also do an overview of the entire park, include some of the other flat rides as well as some of the water rides, and give you guys my overall opinion of the park, and I'll also give you my opinion of each ride as I go through. The first coaster that I'll talk about is at the front of the park. It is Superman the Ultimate Flight. Now, this is a B&M Flyer, and it's an alright coaster in my opinion. My biggest complaint about this coaster is its capacity is kind of limited due to the flying trains. It takes a long time for these trains to be loaded and depart the station, making the long wait time. It's also at the front of the park, so a lot of people try to ride it right away in the morning. And as they're leaving the park for lunch or leaving the park for the end of the day, they also try to ride it. Overall, it does have a decent layout. The pretzel loop is definitely very intense and fun, but other than that, it just kind of flies around. It has a couple more inversions, a couple of near misses. It's an okay ride in my opinion. It's worth riding once just to say you rode it, and that's all I have to say about that coaster. The next coaster I'd like to talk about is a personal favorite of mine, and it is the Dark Knight coaster. This is the other Batman ride in the park. This coaster is themed after the Metro in the city of Gotham, and that the Joker has taken it over. I always find it fun. It has a really good theming. It's an indoor ride, so it's completely enclosed, which is good if you find yourself in a Midwestern thunderstorm. And I find it that it's fun for everybody of all ages. It does have a couple of little bit intense drops, and I always just have a lot of fun riding this coaster. I make sure to get a ride on it every time I make it to the park, and it's definitely a personal favorite of mine. The next coaster I'm going to talk about as you're heading towards the back of the park is the Joker. Now, this is an SS free spin, and I am not a huge fan of these coasters. This is a clone of some of the other ones out there, and they're fun. They're a little bit thrilling, but they're just always a little bit rough. And the way they spin you around, I always hit the restraints just right with my shoulders. I just don't like them. I don't ride them unless I have to, which doesn't happen very often. I only ever ride them to get a credit, so I have ridden this coaster a couple of times, and I just don't find them that fun. The next coaster on this list is a ride that kind of gets forgotten in this lineup, and it is Vertical Velocity, also known as V Squared. This is an intimate impulse coaster, and I always have a lot of fun riding these. It's been cloned a few times. The version that everybody knows is Wicked Twister at Cedar Point. This is basically the same ride. They always have intense launches. They go up to like 70 miles an hour or something like that. They're a lot of fun, but it is a pretty short ride. I always try to ride in the back row, so that way I get the tall, twisted side of the vertical spike. And they're fun, like I said, but it ends pretty quickly, and like I said, it gets kind of forgotten in this park. And the next coaster, which is right across from Vertical Velocity, is Batman the Ride. Now, this is the original B&M invert. It was the first one ever built in the US, and I believe also in the world. And it's also the original Batman. So this ride has been cloned more than any other ride in the history of roller coasters. In fact, I always say it started the Clone Wars. Um, I always like this ride. It's a lot of fun. I like it better than the clones because it gets a lot closer to the ground because it's actually built into the terrain a little bit. And it's always a lot of fun. It's very, very intense. And it's definitely the ride that put B&M on a map for a reason. It's one of the better rides in the park, and this is one of the must-ride coasters when you make it to Six Flags Great America. Next coaster you'll see as you're heading towards the back of the park is Goliath. Now, this is an RMC Topper Track wooden roller coaster. This means it's actually a fully wooden roller coaster, so it holds the title for the tallest, fastest, and steepest wooden roller coaster in North America. And because of that, it does have a really good first drop. It gets you up to like 70 miles an hour or something like that. And it really throws you out of the seat in the back row. The other notable inversion on this ride is the zero G stall, which is just incredibly long and fun. Overall, this is a really good ride. A lot of people like to complain that it is a little bit short, but the nice thing about this coaster is that every element hits you hard and fast, and it is short, but I feel like if it was any longer, it would almost be too intense. In my opinion, this is the best ride in the park, and it's definitely a must ride when you go to the park. The next coaster I like to talk about as you're heading towards the very back of the park is American Eagle. Now, this is the giant white wooden roller coaster that you can see from basically anywhere in the park. And it's kind of a staple of the skyline of Six Flags Great America. Now, this roller coaster was built by Intamin, and it was actually their first roller coaster they ever constructed, making it kind of an important historical ride. The best way to explain this ride is that it is a feeling of a near death experience. As you're going down the track, it kind of feels like all the supports are going to collapse and you're just going to fall into a ride. It features the PTC train, so it is pretty rough, but you actually get some decent airtime on the first drop as well as some of the other hills. And the Rose Bowl is fairly intense as you end the helix. This ride's always a lot of fun. I've probably ridden this roller coaster more than any other ride in the park, which means I've probably ridden this coaster more than any other in the world. It's a personal favorite of mine, and it will definitely be a sad day when they finally decide to tear down this roller coaster. The next roller coaster you'll see as you're heading towards the middle of the park is X Flight. Now, this is a B&M wing coaster, and it has a lot of fun. I'm not a huge fan of the wing overdrop, but for some people, they really love it, especially in the front row. It's always been kind of a short ride, in my opinion. It's one of the earlier wing coasters from B&M, so this is before they were building the bigger ones, like Gatekeeper at Cedar Point. But the near miss elements at the end of the ride are a lot of fun, and the inversions are always fun. This coaster is definitely not on my list in the top 15, and it's definitely more of a mid-tier ride at this park, but it's definitely worth a ride, and it's worth mentioning in this list. The next coaster you'll see as you're heading towards the exact center of the park is the Demon. Now, this is a old style aero looper from like the 1980s. This coaster is fun, it's worth riding, but it is a very, very rough roller coaster, as a lot of aero rides are. Now, I find this coaster to be a little bit better than some of the corkscrew rides because it does have the double loops, and it also features the corkscrews at the end. But it also has a really cool theming tunnel. I always enjoy the music that they like to play as you're waiting in the queue line for this ride. I always tell people you ride it once and then that's about it because it is very rough. But it is a pretty historically significant ride, and it's worth mentioning here on this video. The next coaster that's a staple of the skyline at Six Flags Great America is Raging Bull, also the second best ride in the park. Now, this is a B&M Hyper, and it's one of the first that they ever built. They built this along with Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens Williamsburg around the same time, and they're both considered to be the first of the B&M Hypers. Now, this one is a little bit different because instead of an out and back layout, which most B&M Hypers are, this is a twister layout. So it's more compact, and they had to fit it into a smaller area in the park. Because of this, you see a lot more twists and turns instead of just airtime hill after airtime hill after airtime hill. And I find that that makes it a little bit better and more unique than the rest of the B&M Hypers out there. And for some reason, it has the best first drop of any hypercoaster in the world, in my opinion. There's just something about riding in the back row and getting completely ejected out of your seat and into the restraint as you're going down to the tunnel. And then you rise up into the first overbank turn. This coaster is a lot of fun, and it's definitely a must ride at Six Flags Great America. The next coaster you'll see as you're heading back towards the very front of the park is Viper. Now, this is an in-house construction wooden roller coaster modeled after the Coney Island Cyclone. This coaster has some really good airtime. The first drop is pretty good, and it kind of gets buried in this lineup. Even myself personally forgets about this coaster sometimes at this park. It's very underrated, It's definitely one of the better wooden roller coasters out there, and it's actually fairly smooth, even though it has the PTC trains. This coaster is always a lot of fun, and it's definitely kind of a classic at the park. And don't forget to ride it while you're visiting Six Flags. Next coaster you'll see as you're heading to the front of the park is Max Force. Now, this coaster you can hear from anywhere in the park every time it launches, and that's because it is an SNS air launch. So every time it launches, it uses compressed air, and it literally sounds like a cannon going off. This is a very intense but short roller coaster. It is cool because it features a couple of inversions that you can't find on any other ride, and it also features the world's fastest inversion. It is a 60-mile-an-hour Heartline roll, which is fairly fun. But this roller coaster is all about that launch, which is probably the best launch in North America. Um, it is a very powerful launch. It goes from 0 to 78 miles an hour in less than 2 seconds, and it is just so much fun and so intense. It just shoves you right into your seat, and you're up to that speed before you can even comprehend that you're moving, and it is so much fun. It's definitely worth riding, and you have to ride this roller coaster early because it does have a tendency to break down by the end of the day. It is one of the best coasters in the park. The last coaster I'll be talking about in depth is the Whizzer. Now, this coaster is a classic Schwarzkopf toboggan coaster, and it is actually a lot of fun. This coaster is very important to the Six Flags Great America community, and it's also important to the roller coaster community in general, as it is an ACE historical landmark. It is one of the oldest roller coasters in the park, and for that reason alone, we hope that it sticks around for a long time. Back in the early 2000s, people were talking about shutting this roller coaster down, and everyone was outraged and they petitioned to keep it. And it's been in the park ever since. It's a very fun ride. It's great for all ages. The turns are like way too banked for the speed at which you turn into them, and it is a lot of fun. This coaster style is hard to find basically anywhere else, and it'll be a very, very sad day when they finally shut this ride down for good. So those are the 13 coasters that I consider notable rides in this park. Six Flags Great America as a whole is a really, really good amusement park. However, it is lacking a standout, truly ultra elite roller coaster. A lot of other parks have a significant or definite number one roller coaster, like Cedar Point has Steel Vengeance, Kings Island has Mystic Timbers and the Beast, Great Adventure has El Toro. All of these parks have a coaster that you can definitively say is the best ride in the park. However, at Six Flags Great America, you can make an argument for the top three roller coasters that they're all the best. Max Force, Raging Bull, Goliath, or even American Eagle or Batman, you can argue are the best rides in the park. And because of that, it is missing that number one coaster. They need something like a Fury 325 or a Velocicoaster Intimate ride to really put them on the map and stand them out over some of the other Six Flag parks. However, that being said, it is still a very good and stacked lineup. It definitely stands out as probably the top three Six Flags parks in the US, in my opinion. And it's definitely worth flying out to get some new credits, especially if you're going to be in the Chicago area or in the Midwest in general. It's definitely worth driving out to go visit the park and get some new credits. They also have some water rides and all the flat rides that you would expect at an amusement park. And they have some really cool kiddie coasters that I did not talk about in this video. Overall, it's a really good park. It does need some more investment to clean up the park and also get a new roller coaster. They haven't gotten a new one since Max Force in 2018, so they're really due to construct a new roller coaster and draw in a new audience. This park seems like they've kind of put it on the back burner a little bit, but being around Chicago area, they do like to invest a lot of money in this park, and I think the future is very bright for Six Flags Great America. It's definitely a park that I can be proud of as calling my home park. I'd just like to take a moment to appreciate you guys for watching this video and taking the time to watch it all the way to the end. Um, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this kind of content, and I definitely plan on doing some more roller coaster park reviews in the future. I definitely want to talk about Cedar Point, Kings Island, and some of the other parks I've been to recently, as well as talk about another section of roller coasters that I like to call historically significant roller coasters. I'm hoping to release that video in the next week or so, but there's no guarantees as this is not my full time job, obviously. I definitely appreciate you guys and thanks for watching.